Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to share my review of Pathfinder Season of Ghosts, No Breath to Cry from Paizo Inc. This is written by Dan Cassone and Eleanor Farron. Hopefully I pronounced those names correctly. This softcover clocks in at 96 pages. It is available now, carries an MSRP of $26.99, or you can grab just the PDF alone for $19.99. All that said, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got No Breath to Cry. A few things to mention before we jump on in. First of all, my friends over at Paizo Inc. were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. But neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review. These days, it's very important that you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of No Breath to Cry, but I do want to give you a good feel for what's in this adventure. Lastly, this is an adventure, so if you are a player and your game master has picked up the first 2 chapters, or maybe now 3 chapters of Season of Ghosts, definitely recommend tune out now. Even though I try to stay away from major spoilers, there is a huge spoiler which needs to be discussed. It's had to be discussed for the first 2 chapters. It's going to be discussed here as well because it plays a huge role in this adventure path. You don't want that ruined because you're hanging out. But if your game master hasn't picked up Season of Ghosts yet, maybe they're kicking it around, maybe they're thinking of getting it, by all means, let them know about this video. Of course, I've reviewed the first 2 chapters as well, and then that way they can approach this adventure path and make an informed buying decision. All right, let's jump on in. So we're going to start off, we've got a map on the inside of the front cover and inside of the back cover, as we tend to see with Paizo releases. Let's make sure we give some credit here to the fine artists who brought this to life. So this is broken up into 3 chapters. We will also have a section that discusses mindscapes, and then, of course, our adventure toolbox. So just quick recap. This is an Asian-themed adventure path, and the player characters are citizens of this village. And in the first chapter, which took place in summer, they take part in a festival which is supposed to frighten off evil spirits. It's supposed to keep evil spirits at bay for the year. And then after the festival, the next morning, they wake up and find out the village has changed in a variety of different ways. And the village is actually being attacked by various different creatures and ghoulies and ghosts. The player characters will look to defeat those, and then they actually are introduced to the 2 factions that are vying for governance of the village. And if the player characters want, they can choose a side, or they can choose their own side. If they want to become their own faction to try to run the village, they certainly can. And then they realize there's some sort of curse on the village because people really can't travel too far away from this village. So then our next chapter, which is going to take place in fall, the player characters continue to investigate this curse, and they're also helping the village prepare for winter. And they have a variety of different avenues they can pursue to prepare themselves for the harsh winter ahead. And that's where we pick up with this 3rd chapter. Now, what they found out is the governor of the region has something to do with what's going on here. So they seek him out, and they actually find themselves in what's known as a mindscape, which the reality is the player characters also reside in a mindscape. Because the big spoiler, which they find out from the governor, is they're dead, and they are spirits. And the villagers are all dead. They're all spirits. Now, there have been some hints dropped up until this point, but this is where it is revealed by the governor right there. And the reason why they're all dead is because the governor actually tried to defeat this evil entity and he failed. And the result of that was the people all around there were killed. And now the governor is actually merged with this evil entity. So the player characters are going to have an option of either defeating the governor in combat or letting him live. So different things are going on with that. But that is where the player characters are going to find out that up to this point, and they're probably about 7th level characters by now, they've been playing characters who are deceased, that they are spirits. And that might be tough for some players. I could certainly see some gamers I know have an issue with that. But what's going to soften the blow is when they find out that now, because they're spirits, they're going to have access to spirit powers. So they're going to have new feats available to them. And there is a section in the toolbox all about these feats. Very cool. Like I said, I think it'll soften the blow. So our second chapter here, the player characters are going to be trying to help guide the village through winter. And there are different factors involved. So like there's hope, there's food, there's a trio of factors that throughout the player characters' actions, they've been banking away points or maybe they've been spending points of these 3 game currencies, I guess I'll say. Myself personally, running this, I wouldn't tell them that. I wouldn't say, oh, well, you've got 12 points of food. I would make things abstract. So it'd be like, well, looks like you've got quite a lot of food, or it's very obvious that you do not have enough food to make it through the next couple of weeks or something along those lines. Just make it more narrative as opposed to just being points. So a lot of different cool set pieces are also taking place in that chapter. So it's a bit sandboxy. It's not very linear at all. And then we get to the 3rd chapter, and the village finds out that this noble woman is coming, and she's really creepy. She's like part spider. So the village has to deal with her, and they have hardly any time to prepare for it. Now, interesting thing is, she's a spirit too. She's dead, just like the rest of them, and doesn't know it. And she's very demanding. Although, funny enough, some of her demands, the player characters can be like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Because it'll turn out that there's no consequence to it because she's dead. And up until this point, the player characters have been trapped in this cycle that repeats every year. And they're actually in the midst of the 115th time that these events have repeated. So I would think that the player characters shouldn't be too upset when they find out that they are spirits, because they also learn that there is a possibility for them to return to life. And hopefully that is what happens at the end of this chapter. And they're going to find that those spirits, those monsters, those creatures that were attacking the village in the first chapter aren't really monsters or ghosts or anything like that at all. What they are lumberjacks and people along those lines who are trying to clear the village of Willowshore of evil spirits, because in reality, in the current timeline of Galarian, Willowshore is just a ruin. It's a village that no one's lived in for 114 years. So it is just in disrepair and falling apart. And what these NPCs are trying to do is they are trying to reclaim the forest there and have forestry rights. So it turns out that the player characters are misunderstood as evil spirits, as are the various different lumberjacks and stuff misunderstood as being evil spirits in the player character's mindscape. So then we get a section that talks about mindscapes. We get some samples of Mindscapes as well. Then we get into the adventure toolbox. We get some new rituals. We get some new items. We get those aforementioned spirit powers. Quite a few of them, too. And then we'll get into our bestiary. And we'll wrap up with some details about the two major NPCs for this chapter. And that is the governor, who looks like a wreck there. And also the lumber baron that is in charge of the group that's trying to claim those forest rights as far as the village of Willowshore. And that will wrap up No Breath to Cry. So let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts and give No Breath to Cry a review score. So if you have watched the reviews of the first two chapters of Season of Ghosts, you already know, up until this point, I have really enjoyed this adventure path. I really like the Asian-themed ghoulies and ghosties and monsters and things like that. A great many of them I am not familiar with whatsoever, so they're pretty interesting and very unique. And I think it's a pretty cool story that the player characters are actually spirits and they are dead. Now, it is possible that they may figure these things out before you hit this chapter. Kind of get the impression that, because there are hints that get dropped, but they are easily missed as far as them not being alive. And like I said, I think some players will take umbrage to the fact that for 7 levels or so, they've been role-playing as spirits and not knowing it. But I think most players out there will be pretty thrilled by that outcome, and they'll be excited to see those spirit powers too. I will say the NPC, the governor, is kind of tricky. He is 3-dimensional, so I do appreciate that. But I don't know how I would actually run him at the table, because on one hand, he is the governor of the region, so of course he's got ego to burn. But then again, he's a wreck because he does know that he did kill all these people because he failed trying to defeat this evil entity. So it might be a tricky balance with him as an NPC. But all in all, I really am enjoying Season of Ghosts. I personally think this is my favorite chapter up to this point. Now, we do have one more. It is Bloom Below the Web, which I think is going to have some focus on that noble woman who's like a spider, because she's on the cover. So she's probably going to be the major baddie that they have to worry about. But I really like Season of Ghosts, and I think No Breath to Cry is the best chapter yet. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Pathfinder Season of Ghosts No Breath to Cry a 9 out of 10. Highly recommended, and have enjoyed this adventure path to this point quite a lot. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central right here on YouTube. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you out there get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.